The brass casings hit the concrete floor of the indoor range like fallen coins, each one ringing out a metallic symphony that echoed through the cavernous space. Maya Chun's hands moved with practiced efficiency, her broom sweeping the spent shells into neat piles while the acrid smell of gunpowder hung thick in the recycled air. The fluorescent lights above buzzed with an electrical hum that had become the soundtrack to her days, casting harsh shadows across the numbered shooting lanes that stretched out before her like cemetery plots. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. Range cleaners here early again, came the familiar voice of Sergeant Torres from Lane 7, his tone carrying that particular brand of military condescension that Maya had learned to let roll off her like water. The other members of his sniper team chuckled, their laughter mixing with the distant sound of ventilation, fans working overtime to clear the air of cordag and lead particles. Maya didn't look up from her work. She never did. 3 years of this job had taught her that invisibility was her greatest asset, that being overlooked was more valuable than being acknowledged. Her small frame moved between the lanes like a ghost, collecting the detritus of their training sessions while they discussed wind calculations and bullet drop compensation in voices that barely registered her presence. "You know what I heard?" Staff Sergeant Rodriguez leaned against the shooting bench, his voice dropping to what he probably thought was a whisper. "Command's thinking about bringing in some fancy new cleaning service, corporate outfit. Apparently, our little range cleaner here isn't cutting it anymore." The words should have stung, but Maya had developed thick skin over the years. Instead, she focused on the small details that others missed. The way Rodriguez favored his right shoulder when he shot, suggesting an old injury he was compensating for. The slight tremor in Torres's hands that appeared only when he thought no one was watching. The way Corporal Jenkins consistently pulled his shots to the left, a habit that spoke to fundamental breathing issues he'd never addressed. She knew things about these men that they didn't know about themselves. Observations collected during countless hours of silent service. Their shooting patterns, their stress responses, their tells when they were having a bad day. Information that painted a complete picture of each shooter's capabilities and limitations. Information that lived only in her mind, filed away in the same methodical way she organized the spent casings and discarded targets. The range door opened with a pneumatic hiss, and Maya's attention shifted to the newcomer. Colonel Sarah Martinez entered with the kind of commanding presence that seemed to alter the very atmosphere of a room. Her uniform was pressed to perfection, her bearing ramrod straight, but there was something in her eyes, a sharpness that missed nothing, a calculating intelligence that Maya recognized in herself. "Gentlemen," the colonel's voice cut through their conversation like a blade. "I trust your training is progressing satisfactorily?" The sniper team straightened instantly, their casual demeanor evaporating. "Yes, ma'am," Torres responded, his voice suddenly formal. "We were just discussing equipment maintenance protocols." Colonel Martinez's gaze swept the range, taking in every detail, the pristine condition of the lanes, the meticulous organization of equipment, the way Maya continued her work without interruption despite the change in dynamics. Her eyes lingered on Maya for a moment longer than necessary, and Maya felt a strange prickle of awareness, as if she were being evaluated in ways she couldn't understand. "Carry on," the colonel said finally, but she didn't leave. Instead, she moved to an empty lane and began setting up for her own shooting session. Maya watched peripherally as the woman assembled her rifle with movements that spoke of decades of experience. Every action was deliberate, economical, perfect. The shooting resumed and Maya continued her circuit of the range. But something had shifted. The atmosphere carried a new tension, like the moment before a thunderstorm when the air itself seemed to vibrate with potential energy. She found herself paying closer attention to Colonel Martinez's shooting, noting the woman's exceptional precision, the way she controlled her breathing, the mathematical consistency of her shot placement. As Maya worked her way closer to the colonel's lane, she noticed something that made her pause. A small piece of paper had fallen from the woman's equipment bag, a torn corner of what looked like an official document. Maya bent to retrieve it, her eyes automatically scanning the visible text. Classified personnel assessment. Exceptional. Marksmanship scores, recommended for. The fragment was snatched from her hand before she could read more. Colonel Martinez stood beside her, having moved with surprising silence for someone in military boots. Trash, the colonel said simply. But her eyes held Maya's for a long moment. There was something in that gaze, not the dismissive indifference Maya was used to from the men, but a kind of recognition, as if the colonel saw something in Maya that others missed. Thank you, Maya said quietly, her voice barely audible. Above the renewed gunfire. It was the first time she'd spoken to anyone in the range in months, and the words felt strange on her lips. Colonel Martinez nodded once, then returned to her lane. But the interaction had left Maya unsettled, as if something fundamental had shifted in the carefully balanced ecosystem of her work environment. She resumed her cleaning with practiced efficiency, but her mind was racing, replaying the brief exchange and the cryptic fragment of text she'd glimpsed. The afternoon wore on, punctuated by the rhythmic crack of rifle fire and the casual conversation of the sniper team. Maya worked around them, invisible as always, but now she found herself listening more intently to their discussions. They talked about upcoming evaluations, about budget cuts affecting the training program, about rumors of personnel reassignments that could shake up their comfortable routine. Word is they're bringing in some hotshot civilian contractor to assess our program, Jenkins mentioned during a lull in the shooting. Some kind of efficiency expert. Gonna analyze everything from ammunition expenditure to training effectiveness. Probably some pencil-pushing bean counter who's never held a rifle, Rodriguez scoffed. These corporate types come in, spend a few days making charts and graphs, then disappear with a fat paycheck and recommendations that make no sense in the real world. Maya's hands stilled on her broom as she absorbed this information. A civilian contractor conducting assessments, the torn document fragment, Colonel Martinez's unexpected presence, and her penetrating evaluation of the range operations. Pieces of a puzzle were forming in her mind, but the complete picture remained frustratingly out of reach. As the training session wound down and the team began packing their equipment, Maya noticed Colonel Martinez approaching the range office. A small, glass-walled space where the range master kept records and scheduling information. The colonel's movement was casual, but Maya's trained eye caught the way she glanced around to ensure she wasn't being watched before. Slipping inside, something cold settled in Maya's stomach. In 3 years of working this range, she'd never seen anyone other than the range master enter that office. The colonel's unauthorized access set alarm bells ringing in her head, though she couldn't articulate exactly why. The sniper team filed out, their voices fading as they headed to the locker rooms. Colonel Martinez emerged from the office moments later, her expression unreadable. She paused near Maya, who was organizing cleaning supplies in her utility cart. "You do excellent work here," the colonel said, her voice pitched low enough that only Maya could hear. "I imagine you see a lot working in a place like this." The comment seemed innocent enough, but there was an undercurrent of meaning that made Maya's pulse quicken. "I just clean, ma'am," she replied carefully. "Of course," Colonel Martinez smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Still, someone with your odd attention to detail probably notices things others might miss. Patterns, inconsistencies, anomalies. Maya's breath caught. The colonel was fishing for something, probing to see what Maya might know or have observed. But about what? And why did Maya suddenly feel like she was standing on the edge of a precipice, about to discover that the ground beneath her feet had never been as solid as she'd believed. "I should finish up," Maya said, gripping the handle of her cart a little too tightly. "The range needs to be ready for tomorrow's sessions." Colonel Martinez nodded, but her gaze remained fixed on Maya with uncomfortable intensity. "Of course, but Maya ... The use of her name was a shock. Maya couldn't remember the last time anyone in uniform had bothered to learn it. "If you ever notice anything ... unusual, I hope you'll know who to trust." With that cryptic statement, the colonel turned and walked away, her footsteps echoing in the empty range. Maya stood frozen, her mind reeling with questions and implications she couldn't fully grasp. The familiar space around her suddenly felt foreign and threatening, as if the walls themselves were harboring secrets she'd been blind to. As she finished her cleaning routine, Maya's eyes kept drifting to the range office. What had Colonel Martinez been looking for in there? What kind of records did the range master keep that would interest a high-ranking officer? And why did Maya suddenly feel like she'd been cast in a drama where everyone else knew their lines except her? The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, casting their harsh glow on the empty lanes where tomorrow would bring another day of routine training. But Maya knew, with a certainty that settled deep in her bones, that nothing would ever be routine. Again, something was coming, something that would shatter the careful invisibility she'd cultivated, and force her into the spotlight she'd spent years avoiding. The spent casings were collected, the targets replaced, the lanes swept clean. But as Maya locked up her supplies and prepared to leave, she couldn't shake the feeling that she was walking away from more than just another day's work. She was leaving behind the last moments of a life where her biggest concern was staying invisible. Tomorrow, everything would change. She just didn't know how yet. Maya's apartment was a study in controlled minimalism, every item placed with the same methodical precision she brought to her work. The studio space in Military Housing Complex Building C wasn't much: concrete, block walls painted in regulation beige, a single window that looked out onto the parking lot where officers' cars gleamed under sodium lights. But it was hers, a refuge where she could shed the invisibility that cloaked her during working hours and simply exist without performance or pretense. She moved through her evening routine with practiced efficiency. A dinner of rice, steamed, vegetables, and tea prepared on the hot plate that served as her kitchen. No television. The background noise interfered with her ability to process the day's observations. Instead, she sat at the small folding table that doubled as her desk and opened a worn notebook, its pages filled with her careful handwriting. The notebook was her secret indulgence, a violation of every security protocol she'd ever learned. In it, she recorded observations from the range, shooting patterns, behavioral quirks, fragments of conversation that painted pictures of the men she cleaned up after. It wasn't malicious. She wasn't gathering intelligence or planning sabotage. It was simply her way of making sense of a world that rarely acknowledged her existence. Staff: Sergeant Rodriguez, tension in left shoulder increasing, compensating by adjusting grip angle 2 to 3 degrees. Divorce papers arrived this week, noticed crumpled envelope in trash. Shooting accuracy down 12% on Tuesday session. Corporal Jenkins, new medication affecting fine motor control. Slight tremor in trigger finger, consistent pull to left. Mentioned girlfriend's pregnancy to Torres. Stress response evident in breathing pattern changes. Sergeant Torres, excellent technical skills but overconfident. Takes unnecessary risks with rapid-fire sequences. Mentioned budget cuts affecting training ammunition allowances. Concerned about job security. Each entry was a small portrait of human vulnerability disguised as clinical observation. Maya told herself it was harmless, a way to feel connected to the world she moved through like a ghost. But deep down, she knew it was more than that. It was proof that she existed, that her presence mattered even if no one acknowledged it. The memories of Colonel Martinez's visit replayed in her mind as she wrote. The woman's penetrating gaze, the cryptic comments about trust and anomalies, the unauthorized entry into the range office. Maya's pen paused over the paper as she tried to capture the encounter without revealing her own growing unease. Colonel Martinez, first visit to Range 7, exceptional marksmanship skills, textbook. Form. Approached cleaning staff, unusual. Interest in range operations beyond normal inspection parameters. Accessed range office without range master present, duration approximately 4 minutes. She stared at the entry, then carefully tore out the page and fed it into the small paper shredder she'd bought at the base exchange. Some observations were too dangerous to preserve, even in her private sanctuary. Maya's phone buzzed, a rare occurrence that always startled her. The text was from her supervisor at the Base Services Department. Schedule change tomorrow. Report to Building 18 at 0800 for special assignment. Bring cleaning supplies. Building 18. Maya frowned as she tried to place the location. It wasn't one of the standard facilities on her rotation, not the ranges, not the administrative buildings, not the mess halls where she sometimes filled in when needed. Building 18 was in the secure section of the base, where access required special clearance and visitors needed escorts. She moved to her laptop, an ancient machine she'd bought secondhand from a departing soldier, and pulled up the base directory. Building 18 was listed simply as administrative services with no additional details. The vague description sent a familiar chill through her system, the same instinctive wariness that had kept her alive during her childhood in foster care, where survival depended on reading between the lines of adult conversations and anticipating changes before they happened. Sleep came fitfully that night, filled with fragmented dreams of Colonel Martinez's eyes and the sound of spent casings hitting concrete floors. Maya woke before dawn, as she always did, her internal clock more reliable than any alarm. She dressed in her standard work uniform, dark blue jumpsuit, steel-toed boots, hair pulled back in a practical ponytail. The same outfit she'd worn for 3 years, chosen for its ability to render her functionally invisible in any military environment. The walk to Building 18 took her through sections of the base she rarely visited. Past the motor pool where mechanics were already at work despite the early hour. Past the communications building with its forest of antennas and satellite dishes. Past the administrative complex where officers arrived in pressed uniforms, carrying coffee cups and briefcases, full of papers that would determine the fates of soldiers they'd never meet. Building 18 stood apart from the others, surrounded by a fence topped with concertina wire. 2 MPs flanked the entrance, their weapons casual but ready. Maya approached with the measured pace of someone who belonged, even though every instinct screamed that she was walking into a trap. Maya Chun, reporting for cleaning assignment. She told the first MP, handing over her ID card. The guard scanned her credentials with professional efficiency, then consulted a clipboard. You're expected. Elevator to the 3rd floor, room 312. Someone will meet you there. The elevator ride felt longer than it should have, each floor marked by a subtle ding that seemed to count down to some inevitable revelation. The 3rd floor. Hallway was empty except for the soft hum of ventilation systems and the distant clicking of keyboards from behind closed doors. Room 312 was at the end of the hall, its doors slightly ajar. Maya knocked softly and entered to find Colonel Martinez waiting for her. No longer in military uniform, but dressed in an expensive civilian suit that somehow made her appear even more formidable. The room itself was sparse. A conference table, several chairs, and a whiteboard covered with charts and graphs that Maya couldn't read from the doorway. Thank you for coming, Maya, the colonel said, gesturing to a chair across from her. Please, sit down. We have a lot to discuss. Maya remained standing, her cleaning supplies still clutched in her hands like a shield. I was told this was a cleaning assignment, ma'am. In a way it is. Colonel Martinez's smile was sharp as a blade. "We need someone to help us clean house. And you're uniquely qualified for the job." The words hung in the air between them, loaded, with implications that Maya couldn't fully grasp but instinctively feared. "I don't understand." "Of course you do." The colonel moved to the whiteboard and tapped one of the charts with her finger. 3 years working range 7. 3 years of invisible presence during some of the most sensitive training exercises conducted on this base. 3 years of observing patterns that others miss because they don't think someone like you is worth noticing. Maya's blood turned to ice water in her veins. "I just clean the ranges. I don't pay attention to, Maya." The colonel's voice cut through her denial like a scalpel. "We know about the notebook." The words hit her like a physical blow. Maya's grip on her cleaning supplies tightened until her knuckles went white, but she forced herself to maintain eye contact. "What notebook?" Colonel Martinez opened a file folder on the table and withdrew several photocopied pages. Maya's own handwriting stared back at her. Observations about the sniper team, details about their shooting patterns, notes about their personal lives and stress indicators. Pages she was certain she'd destroyed, somehow preserved and compiled into evidence of what exactly. "How did you? Your landlord is very cooperative when it comes to national security concerns," the colonel said matter-of-factly. "Regular inspections of military housing are standard protocol. Usually, we find nothing more interesting than unpaid bills and personal correspondence. But your case was different." Maya sank into the chair she'd refused moments earlier, her legs suddenly unable to support her weight. "I never meant any harm. I was just trying to understand." "Oh, I believe that completely." The colonel's tone was almost gentle. Now, but there was steel underneath the silk. "You're not a spy or a saboteur. You're something much more dangerous. An accidental intelligence asset with 3 years of detailed observations about one of our most elite sniper units." The room seemed to spin around Maya as the implications crashed down on her. Her harmless hobby, her private way of feeling connected to the world she served, had been transformed into something sinister by the simple act of discovery. "What do you want from me?" Colonel Martinez returned to her seat across the table, her movements deliberate and controlled. "That depends entirely on you, Maya. You see, we have a problem. Someone has been selling information about our training, protocols, shooting schedules, and personnel assessments to interested parties. Foreign interests, specifically." Maya's mind reeled. "You think No, the denial was immediate and absolute. "We know you're not the leak. Your observations are too detailed, too personal. A real spy would focus on actionable intelligence. Training schedules, equipment specifications, tactical procedures. You rag about Rodriguez's divorce and Jenkins's girlfriend. That's not the kind of information anyone would pay for." Relief flooded through Maya, followed immediately by confusion. "Then why am I here?" "Because the real leak is someone with access to official records and assessment files. Someone who understands what information has value and how to package it for sale. Someone who's been very careful to cover their tracks." Colonel Martinez leaned forward, her eyes intense. "Someone who doesn't know that we have an invisible observer who's been documenting behavioral patterns for 3 years." The puzzle pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. Maya's notebook hadn't made her a suspect, it had made her a witness. Her years of careful observation, her detailed notes about stress patterns and behavioral changes, her invisible presence during countless training sessions, all of it had positioned her to identify anomalies that official investigators might miss. "You want me to spy on them," Maya said quietly. "I want you to do exactly what you've been doing for 3 years, the colonel corrected. "Watch, listen, record. The only difference is that now we're asking you to share what you observe." Maya stared at the photocopied pages of her notebook, seeing her careful handwriting transformed into something alien and threatening. "And if I refuse?" Colonel Martinez's expression didn't change, but something cold flickered behind her eyes. "Then you'll be transferred to a different assignment. Somewhere far from here, where your unique skills won't be needed. Your security clearance will be reviewed, of course. Unusual security risks often result in employment termination." The threat was delivered with bureaucratic politeness, but its meaning was crystal clear. Cooperate or lose everything: her job, her home, her carefully constructed life of invisible service. Maya felt trapped between choices that weren't really choices at all. "What exactly do you want me to look for?" "Changes," the colonel said simply. Someone selling information would show signs of stress, behavioral shifts, new spending patterns, altered routines. Your notes suggest you're already tracking some of these indicators. We just need you to pay closer attention and report anything unusual. Maya thought about the men she cleaned up after every day. Torres with his growing tension about job security, Rodriguez dealing with personal problems, Jenkins worried about providing for his expanding family. Any one of them could be hiding secrets, carrying burdens that went beyond the normal stress of military service. "How long do I have to think about this?" Colonel Martinez glanced at her watch. "You don't. The leak is accelerating their activities. We've detected increased information transfers over the past month. Every day we delay gives them more opportunities to compromise operational security." She stood up, smoothing her suit jacket. "You report back here tomorrow morning at 0800. We'll provide you with specific guidance on what to look for and how to document your observations. And if I don't find anything, then we'll expand the investigation to other ranges, other units. But I have a feeling you'll prove very useful, Maya. You see things others miss. That's a valuable skill, whether you choose to use it for us or not." The warning was implicit but unmistakable. Maya gathered her cleaning supplies with hands that trembled slightly, her mind racing through the implications of what she'd just agreed to. Her life of invisible service was over, replaced by something far more dangerous: active participation in a world of secrets and betrayals where her survival depended on reading people with deadly accuracy. As she reached the door, Colonel Martinez's voice stopped her. "Maya, one more thing. The range cleaner nickname your subjects use for you, it's about to become much more accurate than they realize." Maya left the building with her entire worldview fundamentally altered. The base around her looked the same buildings, same vehicles, same personnel moving with familiar efficiency. But everything had changed. She was no longer an invisible observer recording harmless observations in a private notebook. She was an intelligence asset, tasked with identifying the traitor among people she'd spent 3 years watching, people whose vulnerabilities she'd documented with scientific precision. The morning sun felt different on her face as she walked back to her apartment, carrying the weight of secrets that could destroy lives and end careers. Tomorrow she would return to Range 7 as the same invisible cleaning woman she'd always been. But she would be watching with new eyes, listening with trained ears, recording observations that could determine the fate of everyone she'd learned to read. Like an open book. The irony wasn't lost on her. The men who'd dismissed her as range cleaner had no idea how thoroughly she was about to clean house. But as Maya reached her apartment and sat down with her notebook one last time, she wondered if she was the hunter or the hunted in this dangerous new game she'd been forced to play. The fluorescent lights of Range 7 hummed with the same electrical frequency they always had. But Maya heard different harmonics. Now, undertones of deception and betrayal that transformed her familiar workplace into a theater of surveillance. She arrived early, as she always did, but her routine cleaning preparations carried new weight. Every movement was calculated, every position chosen to maximize observation opportunities, while maintaining the illusion of invisible service. Her cleaning cart had been modified overnight. Hidden among the standard supplies were audio recording devices disguised as cleaning products, a high-resolution camera built into what appeared to be an ordinary spray bottle, and a tablet that looked like a work clipboard but connected directly to Colonel Martinez's monitoring station in Building 18. Maya felt like an actor stepping onto a stage where everyone else had been performing for years. Except she was the only one who knew the script had changed. The sniper team arrived at 0730, their voices carrying the easy camaraderie of men who'd worked together long enough to anticipate each other's thoughts. But Maya listened now with trained ears, parsing conversations for anomalies and stress indicators that might reveal which of them was selling secrets to foreign interests. Range cleaners early again, Torres observed, his tone carrying the same dismissive note it always had. But Maya noticed something new, the way his eyes tracked her movements for a fraction longer than usual, as if he were evaluating her presence rather than simply ignoring it. Rodriguez set up his equipment with practiced efficiency, but Maya observed subtle changes in his routine. His rifle case, usually secured with a standard military lock, now sported a more sophisticated locking mechanism. His gear bag, typically organized with military precision, showed signs of recent reorganization, small items in different positions, accessories arranged in ways that suggested someone had been searching through his belongings. Jenkins appeared more stressed than usual, his movements sharp and jerky instead of the smooth economy typical of trained snipers. He'd mentioned his girlfriend's pregnancy to Torres the previous week, but today he avoided personal conversation entirely, focusing on equipment checks with an intensity that bordered on obsessive. Maya began her cleaning circuit, positioning herself to overhear their range preparations while appearing to focus entirely on collecting spent casings from the previous day's sessions. The audio recording devices captured everything: technical discussions about ammunition selection, casual complaints about administrative requirements, and fragments of personal conversation that painted pictures of their lives beyond the range. Budget review meeting this afternoon, Torres mentioned to Rodriguez while adjusting his scope. Word is they're looking at cutting training ammunition allowances again. Brass wants the same performance metrics with 30% less practice. Ammunition. Impossible, Rodriguez replied, his voice tight with frustration. You can't maintain precision shooting skills without consistent practice. These bean counters think marksmanship is like riding a bicycle. Once you learn, you never forget. Maya filed away the information while appearing to focus on organizing cleaning supplies. Budget pressures meant increased stress for the entire team, which could create motivations for seeking additional income through illegal channels. But which of them would be desperate enough to betray their unit? The morning session proceeded normally until Colonel Martinez made an unexpected appearance. She entered the range in full military uniform, her bearing as commanding as ever, but Maya noticed the way each team member reacted to her presence. Torres straightened immediately, his posture shifting from casual to hyper-alert. Rodriguez's hands stilled on his rifle, and his breathing pattern changed subtly. Jenkins actually took a half-step backward, as if trying to create distance between himself and the colonel. "Gentlemen," Colonel Martinez's voice carried clearly across the range. "I wanted to observe this morning's training session personally. There's been increased interest from higher command in the performance metrics of our precision shooting programs." The statement was innocuous enough, but Maya caught the underlying message. Someone was paying attention to this unit, asking questions about their capabilities and training protocols. The kind of scrutiny that would make a guilty party nervous and an innocent person concerned about job security. "Of course, ma'am," Torres responded, but Maya noticed a slight tremor in his voice. That hadn't been there moments earlier. "We're working on long-range precision drills today. Wind calculation scenarios at 800 meters. Excellent." Colonel Martinez moved to a position where she could observe all three shooters simultaneously. "Please proceed as if I weren't here." "But," Her presence changed everything. The casual atmosphere evaporated, replaced by tension that crackled like static electricity. Maya watched the team attempt to maintain their normal routine while very obviously performing for an audience. They couldn't ignore Rodriguez's first shot group was tighter than usual, the result of heightened focus rather than relaxation. Torres missed his third shot by a margin that surprised everyone, including himself. Jenkins's hands developed a slight tremor that affected his trigger control, resulting in inconsistent accuracy that was clearly frustrating him. Maya moved through her cleaning routine while monitoring their stress responses with increasing fascination. Fear affected different people in different ways. Some became hyper-alert and precise. Others lost their fine motor control under pressure. But which reaction suggested guilt and which was simply the normal response of professionals being evaluated by their superior? During a break in the shooting, Maya overheard a conversation that made her blood run cold. Rodriguez and Jenkins were discussing ammunition inventory procedures, but their voices carried an odd undertone that suggested they were really talking about something else entirely. Inventory reconciliation is always tricky, Rodriguez said, his words carefully measured. Sometimes the numbers don't add up the way you'd expect. Training rounds get miscounted. Practice sessions get misreported. Yeah, Jenkins agreed, but his tone was nervous. Good thing the rangemaster keeps detailed records. Wouldn't want any discrepancies to cause problems during official reviews. Maya pretended to organize cleaning chemicals while her mind raced. Were they discussing normal administrative challenges, or were they talking about covering up missing ammunition that had been sold to unauthorized parties? The conversation was ambiguous enough to be innocent, but the stress indicators in their voices suggested deeper concerns. Colonel Martinez spent 45 minutes observing the training session, her presence transforming the range into a pressure cooker of anxiety and performance stress. When she finally left, the atmosphere didn't immediately return to normal. Instead, the three men clustered together in a way Maya hadn't observed before, heads close together, voices lowered to whispers that the audio recording equipment might not capture clearly. Maya positioned herself near their position while appearing to clean scuff marks from the concrete floor. She caught fragments of their conversation that painted a disturbing picture of growing paranoia and internal suspicion. Asking too many questions lately, double quotes, budget meetings are just cover for something bigger, someone's been going through personnel files, need to be careful about what gets documented, The fragments weren't enough to constitute proof of wrongdoing, but they suggested a level of awareness about ongoing investigations that innocent people shouldn't possess. Someone had tipped them off about the security review, or they were guilty parties trying to coordinate their responses to increased scrutiny. Maya's tablet buzzed with an encrypted message from Colonel Martinez. Observe lunch break activities. Report any deviations from normal routine. The lunch break revealed new patterns that hadn't been visible during formal training sessions. Instead of eating together in the range break room, as they usually did, the team split up. Torres remained at the range, claiming he wanted to practice breathing techniques. Rodriguez left the building entirely, saying he had errands to run on base. Jenkins went to the break room but spent most of his time on his phone, speaking in low tones to someone who clearly wasn't his pregnant girlfriend. Maya used the opportunity to conduct more thorough surveillance of their equipment and personal belongings. Torres's gear bag contained the usual assortment of shooting accessories, but she noticed several items that seemed out of place. Electronic devices that weren't standard military equipment, cables that could be used for data transfer, and a small notebook with entries written in what appeared to be a basic code. Rodriguez's absence from the range gave her access to his equipment area. His rifle case, secured with that sophisticated lock she'd noticed earlier, was surrounded by gear that showed signs of recent organization. But hidden beneath his shooting mat, she found something that made her heart pound. A business card for a private security consulting firm with foreign connections, and a receipt for a safety deposit box at an off-base bank. Jenkins's phone conversation grew heated while Maya worked nearby. She couldn't make out specific words, but his tone suggested he was being pressured by someone about something urgent. When he ended the call, his face was pale and his hands were shaking slightly. Classic signs of severe stress that went far beyond normal job-related concerns. The afternoon training session revealed new layers of tension and suspicion. 3 men worked together with professional efficiency, but Maya noticed subtle changes in their group dynamic. They watched each other more carefully. Their conversations carried undertones of doubt and suspicion, and they avoided topics they'd previously discussed openly. Colonel Martinez returned near the end of the session, this time accompanied by 2 men in civilian clothing who observed the training from a distance. Their presence sent ripples of anxiety through the team that were visible to anyone trained to read human behavior. Torres' shooting accuracy suffered markedly. Rodriguez developed a nervous habit of constantly checking his equipment. Jenkins appeared to be struggling with nausea, taking frequent breaks and drinking excessive amounts of water. The civilians took photographs of the range setup, made notes about equipment and procedures, and engaged in quiet consultations that clearly involved evaluation and assessment. They were building a case, gathering evidence, preparing for actions that would fundamentally alter the lives of everyone involved. Maya's tablet buzzed with another message. Phase 2 begins tomorrow. Prepare for escalated surveillance protocols. As the training session ended and the team packed their equipment, Maya observed final details that painted a complete picture of men under severe stress. Their normal end-of-day banter was replaced by tense efficiency. They avoided prolonged eye contact with each other and kept their conversations strictly professional. Each man appeared to be operating under the assumption that the others might be threats rather than teammates. The range fell silent after their departure, leaving Maya alone with the echo of gunfire and the weight of secrets that grew heavier with each passing hour. Her cleaning routine continued with mechanical precision, but her mind was processing information at a furious pace, analyzing behavioral patterns and stress indicators that pointed toward conclusions she wasn't ready to accept. Her cleaning cart, loaded with surveillance equipment and recording devices, felt like a mobile command center for an operation she'd never wanted to join. But as she secured the range for the night and prepared her preliminary report for Colonel Martinez, Maya realized she was no longer just an observer. She'd become an active participant in a dangerous game where the stakes were higher than she'd imagined, and the consequences of failure could destroy lives and compromise national security. The fluorescent lights hummed their electrical song as Maya finished her work, but now she heard warnings in their frequency, cautionary notes about trust and betrayal, about the thin line between service and treachery, about the price of secrets in a world where information could kill. Tomorrow would bring escalated surveillance protocols and deeper involvement in an investigation that was revealing uncomfortable truths about people she'd watched for 3 years. Maya locked the range door behind her and walked into the gathering dusk, carrying the burden of knowledge that was transforming her from invisible servant into reluctant spy. The men who'd called her range cleaner had no idea how thoroughly she was cleaning house. But Maya was beginning to understand that cleaning house might require her to destroy everything she'd quietly built during her years of invisible service. The question was whether she was strong enough to pay that price, and whether the truth was worth the cost of discovering it. Maya arrived at Range 7 before dawn, her cleaning cart equipped with the most sophisticated surveillance package Colonel Martinez's team could provide. Phase 2 protocols included real-time monitoring, enhanced audio recording, and video capabilities that could capture micro-expressions and behavioral tells invisible to casual observation. But more importantly, Colonel Martinez had provided her with specific intelligence about what to look for: financial records, communication patterns, and behavioral indicators that would identify which team member was selling classified information. Morning air carried an electric tension that made Maya's skin crawl. She'd spent the night reviewing classified briefings that revealed the full scope of the security breach. Training schedules, personnel assessments, tactical procedures, and equipment specifications had been systematically leaked to foreign intelligence services over the past 8 months. The information was precise, detailed, and devastating, exactly the kind of intelligence that could only come from someone with daily access to Range 7 operations. Maya set up her cleaning station while reviewing the behavioral profiles Colonel Martinez had compiled. Each team member had been thoroughly investigated, their financial records scrutinized, their personal communications monitored, their off-duty activities documented. The picture that emerged was troubling. All 3 men showed indicators of potential compromise, but none displayed the clear patterns typically associated with espionage activities. Torres arrived first, his usual punctuality now seeming suspicious rather than professional. Maya watched him through the concealed camera as he unlocked his equipment locker, noting the way his hands trembled slightly while handling the combination lock. His gear inspection was more thorough than usual, as if he were looking for signs that someone had disturbed his belongings during the night. Rodriguez entered 20 minutes later, moving with the controlled tension of a man operating under severe stress. His equipment bag showed fresh signs of reorganization, items shifted, accessories rearranged, personal effects repositioned in ways that suggested either extreme anxiety or deliberate operational security measures. Maya documented everything. While appearing to focus on routine cleaning tasks, Jenkins was late, which was unprecedented in Maya's 3 years of observation. When he finally arrived, his appearance shocked her. The confident sniper she'd watched for years looked haggard and exhausted, his uniform disheveled, his movements jerky and unfocused. Dark circles under his eyes suggested he'd gotten little or no sleep, and his hands shook visibly as he assembled his rifle. "You look like hell," Torres observed, his tone mixing concern with suspicion. "Didn't sleep much," Jenkins replied, his voice strained. "Baby's been kicking all night. Kept Sarah awake, which kept me awake." It was a plausible explanation, but Maya noticed several indicators that suggested deception. Jenkins's breathing pattern was irregular, his eye contact was inconsistent, and he touched his face repeatedly while speaking. Classic signs of someone trying to maintain a false narrative under pressure. The morning training session revealed new levels of dysfunction within the team. Their usual collaborative approach to problem solving was replaced by guarded individualism. They shared technical information when necessary, but avoided personal conversation entirely. The easy camaraderie Maya had observed for 3 years had evaporated, leaving 3 professionals who no longer trusted each other enough to function as an effective unit. Maya's surveillance equipment captured every word, every gesture, every micro-expression that might reveal which team member was the security leak. But the more she observed, the more complicated the picture became. All 3 men displayed stress indicators. All 3 showed signs of operational security awareness, and all 3 appeared to be concealing information from their teammates. Colonel Martinez's voice crackled through Maya's concealed earpiece. "Focus on Rodriguez. We've detected unusual activity in his financial accounts over the past 48 hours. Maya adjusted her cleaning routine to position herself closer to Rodriguez's shooting lane while maintaining the illusion of random movement. She watched him conduct his pre-shooting ritual with obsessive precision, checking and rechecking his equipment in ways that suggested either extreme professionalism or paranoid anxiety about being monitored. Rodriguez's shooting performance was erratic, alternating between exceptional accuracy and uncharacteristic misses that frustrated him visibly. During one particularly bad sequence, Maya heard him mutter something under his breath that the audio equipment captured clearly. "This has to end soon. I can't keep doing this." The statement could refer to many things: training stress, personal problems, or operational activities that were weighing on his conscience. But combined with the financial anomalies Colonel Martinez had mentioned, it painted a disturbing picture of someone operating under unsustainable pressure. Torres spent his break period making phone calls, stepping outside the range for privacy. Maya's tablet displayed transcripts of his conversations in real time, courtesy of communication intercepts that Colonel Martinez's team had implemented. The calls were innocuous: discussions with his ex-wife about custody arrangements, conversations with a real estate agent about selling his house, routine administrative calls about schedule changes. But the timing and frequency suggested someone managing multiple competing pressures. Jenkins remained at his shooting position during the break, ostensibly practicing breathing techniques, but actually engaging in what appeared to be coded text message conversations. The messages were brief and cryptic: package delivery confirmed, schedule adjustment necessary, payment processing delayed. They could be innocent communications about completely legitimate activities, but the pattern suggested operational coordination with external parties. Maya's tablet buzzed with an urgent message from Colonel Martinez. Security breach detected in building 18. Someone accessed classified files 30 minutes ago. All 3 subjects have alibi confirmation. Investigate immediately. Maya's blood ran cold. If all 3 sniper team members were accounted for at the range, then the security breach was being conducted by someone else, either an additional conspirator or evidence that the investigation had been focused on the wrong people entirely. But Maya's years of observation had convinced her that the leak originated from Range 7 operations. How could classified files be accessed while all 3 suspects were under direct surveillance? The answer came to her with sickening clarity. The security breach wasn't being conducted by the team members themselves. It was being conducted by someone with access to their personal belongings, their equipment, their lockers, and storage areas. Someone who could photograph documents, copy files, and transfer information without the team members' knowledge or consent. Maya's hands stilled on her cleaning supplies as the implications crashed down on her. The investigation had been wrong from the beginning. Torres, Rodriguez, and Jenkins weren't selling information to foreign interests. They were victims of someone who was using their access and credentials to steal classified material. Stress indicators Maya had observed weren't signs of guilt. They were signs of people who suspected they were being set up, but couldn't prove it. Her tablet buzzed with another message. Range Master Henderson requested emergency leave yesterday. Current whereabouts unknown. Investigate his office immediately. Range Master Henderson. Maya felt like she'd been hit by lightning. Henderson had unlimited access to Range 7, complete knowledge of all training schedules and personnel assignments, administrative authority over equipment and supply requisitions, and the trust of everyone who worked in his facility. He'd been so much a part of the background that Maya had barely registered his existence during her 3 years of surveillance. Maya accessed the range office using cleaning master keys, her heart pounding as she surveyed Henderson's workspace. With trained eyes, the office appeared normal at first glance. Standard military furniture, regulation filing cabinets, the usual assortment of administrative paperwork. But closer inspection revealed anomalies that painted a damning picture. Henderson's computer showed recent access to classified training files that he had no legitimate reason to review. His desk drawer contained a high-capacity USB drive hidden beneath routine paperwork. His filing cabinet had been recently reorganized, with sensitive documents arranged for easy photography. Most damning of all, Maya found a concealed camera system that Henderson had installed to monitor the range activities of the sniper team, not for security purposes, but to gather intelligence about their capabilities and procedures. Maya's tablet displayed a comprehensive analysis of Henderson's activities over the past 8 months. Bank records showed regular deposits that coincided with training sessions and equipment evaluations. Communication intercepts revealed contact with known foreign intelligence operatives. Travel records documented trips to locations where intelligence transfers typically occurred. Preparing and narrating this type of story took us long efforts and hard work. So if you are enjoying the story, please consider subscribing to our channel. Henderson hadn't just been stealing information. He'd been conducting a sophisticated intelligence operation that used the sniper team as unwitting sources while positioning them to take the blame if the operation was discovered. Torres, Rodriguez, and Jenkins had been displaying stress indicators because they'd sensed something was wrong with their operational security, but they couldn't identify the threat because it came from someone they trusted completely. Maya's earpiece crackled with Colonel Martinez's voice. "We've located Henderson. Federal agents are moving to apprehend him now. But we need evidence from his office to support prosecution. Document everything you can find." Maya worked with focused intensity, photographing documents, copying files, and cataloging evidence that revealed the full scope of Henderson's betrayal. The man who'd been responsible for maintaining the security and integrity of Range 7 had systematically violated that trust for financial gain, selling out the soldiers under his authority while manipulating the investigation to focus suspicion on innocent men. The range door opened, and Maya heard familiar voices as the sniper team returned from their break. She finished documenting Henderson's office and returned to her cleaning routine. But everything had changed. The 3 men she'd been surveilling weren't traitors. They were victims who'd been living under a cloud of suspicion while the real threat operated from a position of trusted authority. Torres noticed her first as she emerged from the office area. "Range cleaner? What were you doing in there?" For the first time in 3 years, Maya looked directly at him instead of maintaining her invisible presence. "Cleaning up a mess," she said quietly. "A very big mess." Rodriguez and Jenkins approached, their expressions shifting from casual curiosity to concerned attention as they processed Maya's demeanor and realized she was speaking to them directly rather than maintaining her usual silence. "What kind of mess?" Rodriguez asked, his training making him alert to potential security issues. Maya glanced at her tablet, where Colonel Martinez's latest message authorized her to brief the team on Henderson's arrest and the evidence that cleared them of suspicion. "The kind that's been making your lives difficult for the past 8 months. Rangemaster Henderson was arrested 20 minutes ago for selling classified information to foreign intelligence services. You've all been cleared of any wrongdoing." The silence that followed was deafening. 3 highly trained soldiers processed information that fundamentally altered their understanding of recent events, their relationships with each other, and their own professional security. Maya watched their faces cycle through disbelief, anger, relief, and a dozen other emotions as they grappled with the revelation that their trusted supervisor had betrayed them while positioning them to take the blame. "Henderson?" Torres's voice was barely above a whisper. "But he's worked this range for 15 years. He trained half the snipers on this base, which gave him perfect access to steal information and manipulate operations without detection." Maya replied, surprising herself with the authority in her voice. "He installed surveillance equipment to monitor your activities, copied your training records, and sold detailed assessments of your capabilities to foreign buyers." Jenkins sank into a chair, his face pale with shock and dawning understanding. "The stress we've all been feeling, the suspicion, the paranoia. We knew something was wrong, but we thought it was each other. That was the point," Maya said gently. "He needed you to be suspicious of each other, so you wouldn't compare notes, and realize the security problems were coming from outside your team." Rodriguez was quiet for a long moment, processing implications that went far beyond their immediate situation. "How long have you known?" he asked Maya. "How long have you been investigating us?" Maya met his gaze directly, abandoning years of practiced invisibility. I've been watching all of you for 3 years, but not the way you think. I documented your routines, your habits, your stress patterns, but as a way to feel connected to people who never acknowledged I existed. When Colonel Martinez discovered my observations, she realized I was uniquely positioned to identify behavioral anomalies that might reveal security threats. Torres looked at her with new recognition, seeing her clearly for perhaps the first time despite 3 years of shared workspace. You're not just the range cleaner, are you? I was never just a range cleaner, Maya replied. But I let you think I was because invisible people see things that visible people miss. For 3 years, I watched Henderson manipulate your schedules, access your equipment, and create the conditions that allowed him to steal information while you worked unknowingly as his sources. The 3 men exchanged glances that carried years of professional partnership and shared experience. They'd survived combat deployments, training accidents, and administrative challenges by trusting each other completely. Henderson's betrayal had poisoned that trust, but Maya's revelation was beginning to restore it. Thank you, Rodriguez said simply, for seeing what we couldn't see, for clearing our names, for giving us back our team. Maya nodded, but she knew the victory was incomplete. Henderson's arrest would end the immediate security threat, but it wouldn't repair the damage he'd caused to relationships, reputations, and the fundamental trust that made elite military units effective. The real work of rebuilding would take months or years, and some wounds might never fully heal. Colonel Martinez entered the range as Maya was finishing her explanation to the sniper team. Her expression was grim, but satisfied, the expression of someone who'd successfully completed a difficult and dangerous mission. Gentlemen, the colonel addressed the team formally. I apologize for the suspicion you've been under, and the stress this investigation has caused. Range Master Henderson's betrayal was sophisticated and well concealed. Without Maya's observations and analysis, we might never have identified him as the security threat. Torres looked between Colonel Martinez and Maya, his understanding of recent events continuing to evolve. Maya's been working with you all along? Maya's been working with us for less than a week, the colonel clarified. But she's been preparing for this role for 3 years without knowing it. Her documentation of behavioral patterns and operational anomalies provided the analytical framework that allowed us to identify Henderson's activities and clear your names. Jenkins stood up, his relief visible in every line of his body. So we're no longer under investigation? The investigation is closed, Colonel Martinez confirmed. You're free to resume normal operations, though there will be additional security protocols implemented to prevent similar breaches in the future. Maya watched the 3 men process their vindication and the restoration of their professional reputations. But she also saw the lingering effects of months spent under suspicion, the damage to their trust in authority figures, and the realization that their workplace had been compromised by someone they'd considered a friend and mentor. The cleanup would take more than collecting spent casings and organizing equipment. It would require rebuilding confidence, restoring relationships, and learning to function again as an effective team. Maya realized that her real work was just beginning, not as an invisible servant, but as someone who'd earned the right to be seen and heard by people who finally understood her value. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, but Maya heard different frequencies now, notes of recognition, respect, and the beginning of genuine acknowledgement. The range cleaner had cleaned house in ways no one had expected, revealing truths that would reshape everyone's understanding of service, trust, and the power of invisible observers who saw everything others missed. 3 months after Henderson's arrest and conviction, Range 7 hummed with renewed energy that Maya could feel in every corner of the facility. The fluorescent lights cast the same harsh illumination they always had, but the atmosphere beneath them had transformed completely. where suspicion and paranoia had once poisoned every interaction. A new dynamic of mutual respect and professional trust was slowly taking root. Maya arrived for her morning shift to find the range already occupied, not unusual in itself. But the scene that greeted her would have been unimaginable just months earlier. Torres, Rodriguez, and Jenkins were working collaboratively on advanced shooting scenarios, but they weren't alone. 2 new team members had joined their unit, and more importantly, they were training a young soldier named Private Martinez, who showed exceptional marksmanship potential. "Morning, Maya," Torres called. Out as she entered, his greeting carrying warmth that would have shocked her former invisible self. The casual acknowledgement from a man who'd dismissed her existence for 3 years still felt surreal. But Maya had learned to accept recognition as part of her new reality. "Good morning," she replied, setting up her cleaning station with the same methodical precision she'd always maintained. But now her cleaning routine served dual purposes, maintaining the range while continuing to provide security observations that had proven invaluable during the Henderson investigation's aftermath. The months following Henderson's conviction had brought sweeping changes to base security protocols. Maya found herself appointed as the official range security analyst, a newly created position that formalized her role as behavioral observer and security consultant. Her cleaning duties continued, but they now provided cover for sophisticated surveillance activities that helped identify potential security threats before they could compromise operations. Colonel Martinez had been promoted to oversee base-wide security reforms, and she'd insisted that Maya's analytical methods be integrated into standard operating procedures. What had begun as Maya's private way of understanding her workplace had evolved into a comprehensive behavioral assessment program that was being implemented across multiple facilities. Maya, Rodriguez approached her station, carrying a steaming cup of coffee and wearing an expression of professional respect that still felt strange after years of being ignored. "Could you take a look at the new trainee when you get a chance? Something about her shooting stance seems off, but I can't identify exactly what's wrong." Maya glanced toward the shooting lanes where Private Martinez was attempting to achieve consistent accuracy at 300 meters. Even from across the range, Maya could see subtle indicators that suggested underlying issues with the soldier's training foundation. "Breathing irregularities," she observed after a few moments of careful observation. "She's not maintaining consistent respiratory patterns between shots, which affects her natural point of aim." "That's it exactly," Rodriguez said with satisfaction. "We've been focusing on her grip and trigger control, but the real problem was respiratory discipline. Your eye for detail is incredible." The compliment was genuine, but Maya had learned not to be overwhelmed by the recognition she now received. Regularly, her skills hadn't changed, only their visibility and appreciation had evolved. She'd always been able to read people with exceptional accuracy. The difference was that people now valued her insights rather than dismissing her presence. Jenkins joined their conversation, his demeanor relaxed in ways that had been impossible during the months of investigation. "The new security protocols you helped design are working perfectly," he told Maya. "That suspicious activity we reported last week, your behavioral assessment caught it 3 days before traditional security measures would have detected anything unusual." Maya nodded, pleased that her analytical framework was proving effective beyond range 7. "Behavioral indicators often manifest long before people take concrete actions," she explained. "Someone planning to compromise security shows stress patterns, routine changes, and interpersonal modifications weeks before they actually attempt to steal or leak information." The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a group Maya hadn't expected to see. 3 FBI agents entered the range, led by Agent Sarah Chun, a woman whose reputation for thorough investigation and innovative analysis had earned respect throughout the federal law enforcement community. Maya's heart rate increased slightly. as she wondered whether Henderson's case had revealed additional security concerns that required federal attention. "Ms. Maya Chun?" Agent Chun approached with professional courtesy that immediately put Maya at ease. "I'm Agent Sarah Chun with the FBI's Counterintelligence Division. Colonel Martinez suggested we speak with you about consulting opportunities." Maya blinked in surprise. "Consulting opportunities?" "Your analytical methods during the Henderson investigation were extraordinary," Agent Chun explained. "You identified behavioral patterns and security anomalies that our trained investigators missed. The Bureau is interested in discussing how your observational techniques might be applied to other counterintelligence operations." Torres, Rodriguez, and Jenkins exchanged glances that mixed pride with protective concern. Over the past months, they'd developed genuine respect and friendship for the woman who'd cleared their names and restored their professional reputations. The idea of losing her to federal service was clearly troubling to them. "Maya's pretty. Essential to our operations here," Torres said diplomatically. "Her security analysis has prevented at least 2 potential breaches since the Henderson case was resolved." Agent Chun smiled, recognizing the team's protective instincts. "We're not looking to recruit Ms. Chun away from her current position. We're interested in part-time consulting arrangements that would allow her to maintain her base responsibilities while providing analysis for federal cases that could benefit from her unique skills." Maya felt overwhelmed by the direction her life had taken in such a short time. 6 months ago, she'd been invisible, dismissed, ignored by everyone around her. Now she was being courted by federal agencies and recognized as possessing skills that were valuable enough to shape national security operations. "I need to think about it," Maya said carefully. "My responsibilities here are important to me, and I want to make sure I can fulfill them effectively before taking on additional commitments." "Of course," Agent Chun replied. "Take all the time you need. Colonel Martinez has our contact information when you're ready to discuss specifics." After the FBI agents left, Maya found herself surrounded by the sniper team members who'd become her colleagues and, surprisingly, her friends. The transformation in their relationship was one of the most profound changes in her life. Men who'd once treated her as part of the background furniture now sought her opinions, valued her insights, and included her in their professional and personal conversations. "You're really considering federal consulting work?" Jenkins asked, his tone mixing curiosity with concern. "I don't know," Maya admitted. 6 months ago, I was just trying to stay invisible and do my job without bothering anyone. Now people want to know what I think about everything from base security to federal investigations. It's a lot to process." Rodriguez leaned against a shooting bench, his expression thoughtful. "You know what I think? I think you've always been capable of this kind of work. The difference is that now people are finally paying attention to what you can do." "That's exactly right," Torres agreed. "Henderson's betrayal was terrible, but it revealed something important about how we evaluate people and recognize talent. We almost missed having someone extraordinary working right alongside us, because we made assumptions about who was worth listening to." The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of Colonel Martinez, who entered with her usual commanding presence but now treated Maya as a valued colleague rather than a subordinate to be managed. "Maya, I wanted to discuss the new training program we're implementing. Your behavioral assessment protocols are being adopted by 6 other bases, and they want you to help train their security analysts." Maya felt a familiar flutter of anxiety at the prospect of increased visibility and responsibility. "I'm not sure I'm qualified to train other people. I'm still learning how to do this job myself." "You're more qualified than you realize, Colonel," Martinez replied. "Your methods identified a security threat that had evaded detection for 8 months. Your analysis cleared 3 innocent soldiers and prevented a major intelligence disaster. Your protocols are now standard operating procedure for military ranges across the country. I'd say you're extremely qualified." The recognition was gratifying. But Maya still struggled with the transition from invisible service to acknowledged expertise. What would the training program involve? 2-week intensive courses for security personnel from other installations. You'd teach observational techniques, behavioral analysis, and threat assessment using the methods you developed during the Henderson investigation. The program would run quarterly, which means about 8 weeks per year of additional responsibilities. Maya considered the proposal while watching Private Martinez continue her marksmanship training under the patient guidance of the sniper team. The young soldier was making rapid progress now that her respiratory issues had been identified and corrected, proof that Maya's analytical skills could have positive impacts beyond security concerns. "I'll do it," Maya decided. "But I want to maintain my cleaning duties here at Range 7. This facility is my home, and these people are my teammates. I don't want success to take me away from the work that gives my life meaning." Colonel Martinez smiled with genuine warmth. "I wouldn't dream of reassigning you. Range 7 needs you here, and your cleaning routine provides the perfect cover for ongoing security observations. Besides, staying connected to day-to-day operations will make you a better instructor for the training program." Over the following weeks, Maya watched her life continue to evolve in directions she'd never imagined possible. The FBI consulting opportunity led to part-time work on 3 federal cases where her behavioral analysis proved crucial in identifying security threats and foreign intelligence operations. The base training program attracted security personnel from military installations across the nation, eager to learn observational techniques that had proven effective in real-world counterintelligence operations. But perhaps the most meaningful change was the transformation in her daily work environment. Range 7 had become a place where Maya's contributions were valued, her insights were sought, and her presence was genuinely welcomed. The sniper team included her in their tactical discussions, asked her opinion on equipment modifications, and treated her as an integral member of their professional community. Maya maintained her cleaning routine with the same meticulous care she'd always shown, but now it served multiple purposes. She kept the range immaculate for safety and operational efficiency, provided ongoing security surveillance to prevent future Henderson-type compromises, and created opportunities for the informal conversations and observations that were essential to effective team dynamics. 6 months after Henderson's conviction, Maya received news that provided the final piece of closure she needed. Henderson had been sentenced to 25 years in federal prison for espionage, and his confession revealed the full scope of his intelligence operation. The information he'd sold had compromised military operations in 3 countries and endangered the lives of soldiers and intelligence operatives worldwide. But Henderson's conviction had also validated Maya's analytical methods and proven the value of her observational approach. Federal prosecutors credited her behavioral analysis with breaking the case and preventing additional intelligence disasters. Her techniques were now being studied by counterintelligence agencies throughout the government, and she'd received commendations from organizations she'd never imagined would know her name. Maya stood in Range 7 as the afternoon light slanted through the windows, casting different shadows than the harsh fluorescent illumination that dominated most of her working hours. The space looked the same as it always had: concrete floors, numbered lanes, equipment lockers, and shooting benches. But everything had changed in ways that went far deeper than surface appearances. Torres, Rodriguez, and Jenkins were packing their equipment after another successful training session, their easy camaraderie restored and strengthened by the trials they'd survived together. Private Martinez was securing her gear with growing confidence, her marksmanship improving daily under Maya's analytical guidance and the team's patient instruction. Colonel Martinez was reviewing security reports that showed Range 7 had become a model facility for operational security and threat prevention. "Maya," Torres called out as the team prepared to leave. "We're having dinner at Rodriguez's place tonight. Sarah's making her famous enchiladas, and we're celebrating Jenkins's promotion. You should come." The invitation was casual, friendly, and completely natural, the kind of social interaction that had been unthinkable during Maya's years of invisible service. But now it felt right, appropriate, and welcome. "I'd like that," Maya replied, surprising herself with how easily acceptance came. "Should I bring anything?" "Just yourself," Rodriguez answered. "You've given us plenty already." As the range emptied, and Maya completed her end-of-day routine, she reflected on the extraordinary journey that had brought her from invisible cleaning woman to recognized security expert. The transformation hadn't been easy. It had required courage she didn't know she possessed, skills she'd never been asked to demonstrate, and faith in her own worth that had taken years to develop. But perhaps the most important change was internal. Maya had learned that being invisible wasn't protection from the world's dangers. It was simply a way of avoiding opportunities for meaningful connection and contribution. Her years of silent observation had prepared her for challenges she'd never expected. But only by stepping into visibility had she been able to make the difference that her skills and insights made possible. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead as Maya secured range 7 for the night, but she heard different harmonics now, frequencies of accomplishment, recognition, and belonging that resonated with her deepest sense of purpose. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to contribute, and new ways to use her unique abilities in service of something larger than herself. The range cleaner had cleaned house in ways no one could have predicted, revealing truths about trust, betrayal, and the extraordinary value of people who see everything others miss. But more importantly, she'd cleaned up her own life, transforming from invisible observer to indispensable analyst, from dismissed servant to respected colleague, from silent witness to active participant in the vital work of protecting the nation's secrets and the soldiers who served its cause. 2 years later, Maya stood before a classroom filled with 32 military and civilian security analysts from installations across 3 continents, her presentation slides displaying behavioral patterns and threat indicators that had become standard reference material for counterintelligence operations worldwide. The irony wasn't lost on her. The woman who'd spent years perfecting the art of invisibility now commanded audiences of professionals eager to learn her methods of observation and analysis. Behavioral anomalies manifest in predictable patterns, she explained to the attentive faces before her. But recognizing those patterns requires sustained observation over extended periods. Most security breaches aren't sudden events. They're the culmination of weeks or months of subtle changes that become visible only to observers who understand what normal baseline behavior looks like for specific individuals. A hand went up. From the 3rd row, Colonel James Park from the Joint Base Lewis McChord. "Ms. Chun, your case studies always emphasize long-term observation periods. But in practical terms, how do we implement that kind of sustained surveillance without compromising operational security or violating personnel privacy rights?" Maya smiled, remembering when such questions would have terrified her. Now they energized her, providing opportunities to share hard-won knowledge that could prevent security disasters and protect innocent people from false accusations. The key is integration with routine operations. Security observation becomes most effective when it's embedded in normal workplace activities that people expect to see anyway. She clicked to the next slide, which showed range 7 as it appeared during a typical training session. Cleaning personnel, maintenance staff, administrative assistants. These are the people who have legitimate access to secure areas on regular schedules. They see things that management misses because they're part of the background environment that most professionals learn to ignore. The classroom erupted in murmurs of recognition and understanding. Maya had learned that her story resonated with security professionals worldwide because it challenged fundamental assumptions about who could contribute to intelligence operations and how valuable insights were often overlooked due to institutional blindness about the worth of support personnel. After the session ended and the analysts filed out, Maya gathered her materials while reflecting on the extraordinary changes that had transformed her life over the past 2 years. The FBI consulting work had evolved into regular contracts with multiple federal agencies. Her training programs were booked solid for the next 18 months. Publishers were competing to acquire the rights to her book about behavioral analysis in security contexts. But none of those achievements meant as much to her as the fact that Range 7 remained her home base, and the sniper team that had become her surrogate family continued to treat her as an integral member of their professional community. Maya's phone buzzed with a text from Torres. Martinez just hit a perfect score at 1,000 meters. Dinner celebration at 1900. Rodriguez is making his famous barbacoa. Don't be late. Private Martinez, now Corporal Martinez, had indeed become an exceptional marksman under the team's guidance. But more importantly, she'd become the first in a new generation of soldiers who understood everyone in their operational environment, regardless of rank or job title, had the potential to contribute valuable insights to mission success. Maya drove back to the base through familiar streets that looked different now than they had during her years of invisible service. The same buildings, the same security checkpoints, the same personnel moving with military efficiency. But Maya saw it all with eyes that had been trained to notice details others missed, and more importantly, with the confidence of someone whose observations were valued and respected. Range 7 was busy when she arrived, occupied by a new sniper team conducting advanced training exercises. Maya recognized the lead instructor, Sergeant First Class Torres, recently promoted and assigned to develop training protocols for precision shooting programs throughout the military. His teaching methods incorporated behavioral analysis techniques that Maya had developed, creating more effective evaluation systems for identifying shooter potential and addressing performance issues. "Maya," Torres called out as she entered, his greeting carrying the warm familiarity of longtime friendship. Perfect timing. "We're testing new assessment protocols with this team, and I could use your input on stress pattern recognition." Maya set up her cleaning station while observing the new team's dynamics. 4 shooters, all highly skilled, but each displaying different responses to performance pressure. The team leader showed confidence that bordered on overconfidence. The second shooter displayed textbook precision, but lacked adaptability under changing conditions. The third was technically proficient, but carried emotional baggage that affected his consistency. The fourth had exceptional natural ability, but needed guidance in channeling that talent effectively. The team leader needs humbling scenarios that challenge his assumptions, Maya advised Torres quietly. The second shooter would benefit from adaptive problem-solving exercises. The third needs counseling support to address whatever personal issues are affecting his performance. The fourth just needs time and encouragement. His fundamentals are already better than most veterans. Torres nodded, making notes that would inform his training approach over the coming weeks. "Your analytical framework has revolutionized how we evaluate and develop shooting talent. We're identifying potential problems earlier and addressing them more effectively than ever before." The afternoon session proceeded smoothly, with Maya moving through her cleaning routine while providing real-time behavioral assessment to support the training process. It was the perfect integration of her original duties with her evolved responsibilities, maintaining the range while contributing professional expertise that enhanced operational effectiveness. 5 years later, the auditorium at the National Defense University was packed to capacity, with additional viewers participating via satellite link from military installations and federal agencies worldwide. Maya stood at the podium, looking out at an audience that included generals, federal directors, international security officials, and academic researchers who'd come to hear her keynote address at the Global Counterintelligence Symposium. "Ladies and gentlemen," Maya began, her voice carrying clearly through the sophisticated sound system. "5 years ago, I was invisible. Not metaphorically invisible, literally invisible to the people I worked alongside every day. I was a cleaning woman whose presence was so thoroughly dismissed that I could observe the most sensitive military operations without anyone considering whether I might be paying attention to what I saw." She paused, letting the audience absorb the implications of that statement. "Today, I want to talk about the security vulnerabilities created by institutional blindness, about the value and potential of support personnel, and how addressing those vulnerabilities can transform both security effectiveness and organizational culture." The presentation that followed drew on 7 years of experience implementing behavioral analysis programs across military and federal installations. Maya shared case studies of security breaches prevented, false accusations avoided, and operational effectiveness enhanced through systematic attention to the observational capabilities of personnel who were typically overlooked or undervalued. But the most powerful part of her presentation focused on the human cost of institutional blindness, the waste of talent, the missed opportunities for innovation, and the security risks created when organizations failed to recognize the contributions that every member could make to mission success. The Henderson case taught us that security threats can emerge from trusted positions and that effective counterintelligence requires observational capabilities that traditional approaches often miss. Maya explained to the rapt audience, but perhaps more importantly, it demonstrated that exceptional analytical talent can exist in unexpected places and that organizational effectiveness depends on our willingness to recognize and develop that talent, regardless of where we find it. The standing ovation that followed was gratifying, but Maya's attention was drawn to a familiar group in the third row. Torres, now a major and the lead instructor for advanced marksmanship programs. Rodriguez, recently promoted to sergeant major and serving as senior enlisted advisor for range operations. Jenkins, who'd transitioned to civilian contractor work, but remained involved in military training as a consultant. Colonel Martinez, now Brigadier General Martinez, and the commanding officer responsible for security protocol development across all armed services. They were her family now, in the truest sense of the word. The bonds forged during those difficult months of investigation had deepened over years of continued collaboration and friendship. They'd supported her through the challenges of transitioning from invisible service to public recognition, celebrated her successes, and provided the stability and encouragement that had made her professional evolution possible. After the presentation, Maya found herself surrounded by attendees eager to discuss implementation of her methods in their own organizations. But she made time for a private conversation with her original team, the men who'd given her the first recognition she'd ever received and who continued to be her anchors in a life that sometimes felt overwhelmingly changed from her years of quiet invisibility. "That was incredible," Torres said, his pride in her accomplishments evident in every word. 5 years ago, none of us could have imagined you'd be giving keynote addresses to audiences like this." 5 years ago, I couldn't have imagined it either, Maya replied with genuine warmth. "But the foundation was always there. You just helped me realize that being invisible didn't mean being powerless. It meant having opportunities to see things that others missed." Rodriguez clasped her shoulder in a gesture of friendship that would have been unthinkable during her early days at Range 7. "The programs you've developed have prevented dozens of security breaches and cleared hundreds of innocent people who might have been falsely accused. Your work has made the entire military more effective and more just." Jenkins nodded in agreement. "And more importantly, you've changed how we think about talent recognition and personnel development. The military is better at identifying and developing potential in unexpected places because of the example you've set." General Martinez approached their group, her bearing as commanding as ever, but her expression warm with genuine affection for the woman who'd helped save her career and revolutionize military security protocols. Maya, I wanted to discuss the international expansion of your training programs. We have requests from allied nations who want to implement your methods in their own defense establishments. Maya felt the familiar flutter of anxiety that accompanied discussions of expanding responsibilities, but it was tempered now by confidence earned through years of successful implementation and proven results. What kind of timeline are we looking at? 18 months for the pilot programs, with full implementation over 3 years. It would involve travel to NATO countries initially, then expansion to Pacific allies. The State Department is very interested in your methods as soft diplomatic tools, helping allied nations strengthen their security while building cooperative relationships. The scope of the opportunity was breathtaking, but Maya had learned to evaluate new commitments carefully to ensure they aligned with her core values and didn't compromise her ability to maintain the relationships and responsibilities that gave her life meaning. I'd be honored to contribute to international security cooperation, Maya said after considering the implications. But I want to maintain my connection to Range 7 and my training responsibilities here. Those relationships and that work remain central to who I am and what I want to accomplish. Of course, General Martinez replied with understanding. We've learned that your effectiveness comes partly from staying grounded in practical operations rather than becoming purely theoretical or administrative. The international programs would be structured to support that balance. 10 years later, Maya stood in the early morning quiet of Range 7, her cleaning supplies arranged with the same methodical precision she'd maintained for over a decade. The range looked almost identical to how it had appeared during her first days of invisible service. Same concrete floors, same shooting lanes, same fluorescent lights humming overhead. But everything else had changed in ways that went far deeper than surface appearances. The sniper team conducting morning training exercises included soldiers from 4 different countries, part of an international exchange program that had grown from Maya's security analysis work into a comprehensive cooperative training initiative. The team leader was Captain Sarah Martinez, formerly Corporal Martinez, now a decorated officer whose marksmanship skills had been honed under Maya's analytical guidance and the mentorship of Torres, Rodriguez, and Jenkins. "Good morning, Maya," Captain Martinez called out, her greeting carrying the easy familiarity of someone who'd grown up professionally in an environment where Maya's contributions were recognized and valued. "We're working on adaptive shooting scenarios today. Mind taking a look at stress response patterns when you get a chance?" "Of course," Maya replied, setting up her station with movements that had become second nature over more than a decade of service. But her cleaning routine now served purposes that extended far beyond maintaining facility cleanliness. She was conducting real-time behavioral analysis, providing training support, mentoring junior analysts, and maintaining the security vigilance that had prevented numerous potential breaches over the years. The morning training revealed the evolution of military culture that Maya's work had helped inspire. Officers and enlisted personnel collaborated with support staff as equal contributors to mission success. Every member of the team understood that valuable insights could come from anyone, regardless of rank or job title. The rigid hierarchies that had once made Maya invisible had been replaced by more flexible, inclusive approaches that recognized talent and potential wherever they appeared. Maya's tablet buzzed with a message from the White House Office of Personnel Management. Congressional Medal of Freedom recommendation approved. Ceremony scheduled for next month. Congratulations on this well-deserved recognition. Maya stared at the message, still processing the surreal reality of receiving the nation's highest civilian honor. The girl who'd been invisible for years, dismissed and ignored by everyone around her, was being recognized at the highest levels of government for contributions to national security and organizational innovation, but as meaningful as external Recognition had become. Maya's greatest satisfaction came from the daily evidence that her work was making a practical difference in people's lives. The security protocol she'd developed had prevented dozens of espionage cases, protecting both national secrets and innocent personnel from false accusations. The training program she'd created had spread throughout the military and federal government, improving security effectiveness while creating more inclusive and effective organizational cultures. Maya, Torres's voice interrupted her reflection. He entered the range wearing the uniform of a colonel, his latest promotion reflecting a career trajectory that had been enhanced by his association with revolutionary approaches to personnel development and security analysis. I wanted to give you advance notice. We're implementing your behavioral analysis protocols in all NATO training facilities. The International Steering Committee approved the expansion yesterday. Maya felt a familiar mix of pride and humility at news of her methods being adopted on such a scale. That's incredible. How many facilities are we talking about? Initially, 47 installations across 12 countries. Eventually, the program could reach hundreds of military and security facilities worldwide. Torres paused, his expression serious. Maya, do you realize what you've accomplished? Your work isn't just changing how the American military approaches security. It's influencing military culture globally. Maya considered the magnitude of what Torres was describing. Her private notebook observations, born from a desire to feel connected to people who ignored her existence, had evolved into analytical methods that were reshaping how military organizations worldwide thought about talent recognition, security effectiveness, and inclusive excellence. Sometimes I can barely believe it, Maya admitted. 10 years ago, I was just trying to stay invisible and do my job without bothering anyone. I never imagined that my observations could have this kind of impact. That's exactly why they've had this impact, Torres replied with conviction. Your methods work because they come from genuine observation and analysis rather than theoretical frameworks developed in isolation from practical operations. You've changed military culture because you understood it from a perspective that no one else had access to. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of a group Maya recognized but hadn't expected to see at Range 7, Director James Harrison of the Central Intelligence Agency, accompanied by Deputy Director Sarah Collins and 3 senior analysts, whose presence suggested that her morning was about to become much more complex than routine cleaning and training support. Ms. Chun, Director Harrison approached with the respectful deference that Maya had learned to expect from high-ranking officials who understood the value of her analytical capabilities. I apologize for the unexpected visit, but we have a situation that could benefit significantly from your expertise. Maya set down her cleaning supplies, recognizing the serious tone that indicated operational rather than administrative concerns. What kind of situation? Intelligence intercepts suggest a coordinated espionage operation targeting multiple military installations simultaneously. The operation appears to be using support personnel as unwitting intelligence sources, similar to the Henderson case, but on a much larger scale. Director Harrison paused, studying Maya's reaction carefully. We need someone who can identify the operational patterns and help us prevent a major intelligence disaster. Maya felt her pulse quicken as she processed the implications. A coordinated operation targeting multiple installations could compromise security across the entire military establishment, endangering operations worldwide and putting countless personnel at risk. What's the time frame? Intelligence suggests the operation is accelerating towards some kind of major information transfer within the next few weeks. We need rapid analysis and recommendations that could prevent a catastrophic security breach. Deputy Director Collins stepped forward, her expression grave. Ms. Chen, your methods are uniquely suited to identifying the kind of behavioral patterns we're seeing. We need your help to stop this before it causes irreparable damage. Maya looked around Range 7, seeing the familiar space that had been her home and workplace for over a decade. The place where she discovered her analytical abilities, developed lifelong friendships, and built a career that had exceeded her wildest dreams. The thought of leaving, even temporarily, to address national security emergencies filled her with mixed emotions, but she also understood that her unique skills created responsibilities that extended beyond her personal comfort zone. The methods she'd developed could prevent espionage disasters and protect innocent people from false accusations. Her expertise could make the difference between security success and catastrophic failure. "How long do you need me?" Maya asked, already knowing she would accept whatever commitment was required. "Initially, 2 weeks for preliminary analysis and recommendations. Potentially longer if the situation requires extended investigation." Director Harrison's tone was respectful but urgent. "Miss Chun, I want you to understand, this isn't just another consulting assignment. This is a direct threat to national security that your specific expertise is uniquely positioned to address." Maya nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility that had become familiar over years of high-stakes security work. "I'll need to arrange coverage for my responsibilities here, but I can be available within 48 hours. "Thank you, Director," Harrison replied with obvious relief. "A car will pick you up tomorrow morning at 0600. Briefing materials will be provided during transport." As the CIA delegation departed, Maya found herself surrounded by her Range 7 family, Torres, Captain Martinez, and several other team members, who'd overheard enough of the conversation to understand that she was being called away on urgent national security business. "How long this time?" Captain Martinez asked, her concern evident but mixed with pride in Maya's continued recognition at the highest levels of government. 2 weeks minimum, Maya replied. "Possibly longer depending on what I find." Torres nodded, with understanding born from years of military service where operational requirements often took precedence over personal preferences. "Range 7 will be here when you get back, it always is." Maya smiled at the simple truth of that statement. Range 7 had been her anchor through every transition and challenge over the past decade. No matter how far her responsibilities expanded, or how complex her professional life became, this facility remained her home base. The place where she discovered her capabilities and built the relationships that defined her life. "Take care of the place while I'm gone," Maya said, gathering her personal items and preparing for another chapter in a career that had taken her from invisible cleaning woman to national security asset. "Always do," Torres replied. "Just remember, no matter how important the mission becomes, you've got family here who are proud of everything you've accomplished and who will be waiting to welcome you home." Maya left Range 7 with her heart full of gratitude for the journey that had brought her from invisibility to recognition, from isolation to belonging, from dismissal to respect. The fluorescent lights hummed their familiar electrical song as she walked toward the exit, but Maya heard different frequencies now, harmonies of accomplishment, recognition, and the deep satisfaction that came from using her unique gifts in service of something larger than herself. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to apply the analytical skills that had been forged in this very facility under circumstances she could never have imagined. But tonight, she would prepare for another mission in a career that had proven that extraordinary capabilities could emerge from the most unexpected places. And that recognition, when it finally came, was worth every year of patient, invisible service that had prepared her to excel when opportunity finally arrived. The range cleaner had become something no one could have predicted, including herself. But the essence of who she was remained unchanged. Someone who saw what others missed, who understood the value of careful observation, and who used those gifts to protect the people and institutions she'd learned to serve with quiet excellence and unwavering dedication. 15 years later, this is the remarkable story of Maya Chun, a woman whose journey from overlooked cleaning staff to internationally acclaimed security expert demonstrates that extraordinary potential often exists in the most unexpected places. It's a testament to the power of careful observation, analytical thinking, and the courage to speak up when something doesn't seem right. 20 years ago, Maya Chun was exactly what her title suggested, invisible. As a cleaning woman at Range 7, a military shooting facility, she moved through her duties unnoticed by the soldiers, instructors, and staff who used the facility daily. Her cleaning cart made familiar sounds as she worked, but to those around her, she might as well have been part of the equipment. Maya had perfected the art of being unseen, completing her tasks efficiently while staying out of everyone's way. But invisibility, as Maya would later discover, offered an unexpected advantage. While others focused on their immediate responsibilities, training, instruction, marksmanship, Maya observed everything. She noticed patterns in behavior, inconsistencies in routines, and details that others missed simply because they weren't looking. Her years of silent observation were developing analytical skills that no one, including Maya herself, fully recognized at the time. During those early years, Maya kept private notebooks filled with her observations. She recorded not just what she saw, but what seemed unusual or out of place. These weren't official reports or formal security assessments. They were simply the careful notes of someone who had learned to pay attention to details that others overlooked. Maya had no way of knowing that these private observations were developing capabilities that would eventually revolutionize military security protocols. Everything changed when Maya's analytical abilities were put to their first real test. Henderson, a figure whose espionage activities had been damaging military operations and endangering lives, became the focus of Maya's attention through patterns she observed, but initially couldn't fully explain. While others saw normal military routine, Maya noticed subtle inconsistencies that suggested something more significant was happening. The investigation that followed, Henderson's eventual capture, revealed the extent of his betrayal, security breaches that had affected operations worldwide, intelligence compromised across multiple allied nations, and soldiers whose careers and lives had been put at risk by his activities. But it also revealed something else. Maya's observations had been crucial to identifying and stopping the threat that conventional security measures had missed. For the first time in her career, Maya's analytical capabilities were not only recognized but celebrated. The invisible cleaning woman had seen what trained security professionals had overlooked, demonstrating that valuable insights could come from anyone willing to observe carefully and think critically about what they witnessed. The success of the Henderson investigation marked the beginning of Maya's transformation from invisible service worker to recognized security expert. Military leadership began to understand that her unique perspective, developed through years of unnoticed observation, offered capabilities that complemented traditional security approaches. Maya found herself working alongside people who had previously barely acknowledged her existence. Torres, Rodriguez, Jenkins, and others who had been mere names and faces during her cleaning duties became colleagues and eventually close friends. These relationships formed the foundation of Maya's confidence as she navigated the challenging transition from invisibility to professional recognition. The transformation wasn't just professional, it was deeply personal. Maya had to learn to trust her own analytical abilities, to speak with authority about her observations, and to accept that her insights had real value in protecting military operations and personnel. Years of being dismissed or ignored had created self-doubt that had to be overcome through experience and the encouragement of colleagues who had come to respect her unique capabilities. As Maya's role evolved, she began systematically developing the observational methods that had served her so well during her years of invisible service. What had been intuitive pattern recognition became structured analytical protocols. Her ability to notice behavioral inconsistencies was refined into formal training programs that could be taught to other security personnel. The methods Maya developed went far beyond traditional security approaches. While conventional protocols focused on obvious threat indicators, Maya's techniques emphasize subtle behavioral patterns, environmental inconsistencies, and the kind of detail-oriented observation that had characterized her cleaning duties. She taught others to see what they had been missing, not through more sophisticated technology or expanded surveillance, but through more careful attention to the human elements of security. Maya's analytical framework proved particularly effective in identifying insider threats, security breaches that came from within trusted organizations rather than external enemies. Her experience observing people in their daily routines had given her insights into normal behavior patterns that made abnormal activities more apparent. This capability became increasingly valuable as military and security organizations recognized that some of their most serious vulnerabilities came from within their own ranks. The success of Maya's methods at Range 7 led to their adoption by military facilities across the country. Then internationally, as allied nations recognized the effectiveness of her approaches. Training programs based on her observational techniques were implemented in dozens of countries, creating a global network of security personnel trained in methods that had originated with a cleaning woman's private notebooks. Maya found herself traveling extensively, consulting with international security organizations, speaking at conferences, and training personnel from military and intelligence agencies worldwide. Her influence expanded far beyond what anyone could have imagined when she was invisibly cleaning Range 7. But the core principles remained the same: careful observation, analytical thinking, and the recognition that threats often revealed themselves through subtle patterns rather than obvious indicators. The international adoption of Maya's methods created diplomatic benefits as well as security improvements. Partner nations working with shared analytical frameworks developed stronger cooperative relationships, and the success of joint training programs built trust that extended into other areas of international cooperation. Maya's work had become a form of soft power diplomacy, strengthening alliances through shared approaches to common security challenges. The story reaches its culmination with the dedication of the Maya Chen Institute for Behavioral Security Analysis, a facility designed to institutionalize and expand the methods Maya had developed over 2 decades of evolution from invisible service to international recognition. The institute represents not just acknowledgement of Maya's individual achievements, but commitment to the principles she had demonstrated, that valuable insights could emerge from unexpected sources when organizations were wise enough to recognize and develop talent wherever it appeared. The Institute houses training programs that teach Maya's observational methods to new generations of security personnel, research facilities where her techniques are refined and adapted to emerging threats, and conference facilities where international delegations collaborate on cooperative security initiatives. It serves as both a monument to Maya's achievements and a living laboratory for continuing the work she had begun with private observations in a military shooting range. But perhaps most importantly, the Institute embodies Maya's commitment to identifying and developing analytical talent broadly rather than assuming that security expertise could only come from traditional sources. Young personnel from maintenance, administration, supply, and other support roles receive the same training opportunities as conventional security specialists, ensuring that future observers with Maya's potential won't remain invisible for 20 years before their capabilities are recognized. Maya's story transcends individual achievement to illustrate broader principles about talent recognition and organizational effectiveness. Her journey demonstrates that extraordinary capabilities often exist in unexpected places, waiting for recognition and development rather than training and creation. The invisible cleaning woman had always possessed the analytical skills that made her internationally famous. What changed was not her abilities, but her opportunity to use them. The transformation of Range 7 from a simple training facility to a model for international security. Cooperation reflects how individual recognition can create institutional change that benefits entire organizations and communities. Maya's influence extended far beyond her personal career advancement to strengthen military and security operations worldwide, preventing security breaches that could have affected millions of people. Her story also illustrates the importance of inclusive excellence, the recognition that organizational strength comes from developing talent wherever it exists rather than relying on traditional assumptions about who has valuable contributions to make. Maya's success opened pathways for other overlooked personnel to develop and share their capabilities, creating cultural changes that strengthen security operations broadly. As Maya's story concludes, her influence continues to expand through the students she trains, the methods she develops, and the cultural changes she inspires in military and security organizations worldwide. The Maya Chen Institute ensures that her approaches will evolve and improve long after her active involvement ends, creating institutional support for discovering and developing analytical talent wherever it appears. Young soldiers like Private Lisa Chang represent the continuing relevance of Maya's story, invisible observers with valuable insights, who need encouragement and guidance to trust their analytical abilities and share their observations with colleagues wise enough to listen. Maya's legacy lies not just in the specific security threats she identified or the protocols she developed, but in the transformation of organizational cultures to recognize and value contributions from unexpected sources. The story of Maya Chen reminds us that extraordinary potential exists in every organization, often in positions and people that receive little recognition or attention. Her journey from range cleaner to international security expert demonstrates that when leaders are wise enough to look beyond traditional assumptions about talent and capability, they can discover resources that strengthen their organizations in ways no one could have anticipated. Maya Chen's remarkable transformation from invisible cleaning staff to internationally recognized security expert is just one example of the extraordinary potential that exists when talent is recognized and developed regardless of its source. Her story demonstrates that careful observation, analytical thinking, and the courage to share insights can create change that extends far beyond individual achievement to strengthen entire organizations and communities. If you found Maya's journey inspiring and would like to hear more stories about people who overcame assumptions and limitations to make extraordinary contributions, please subscribe to our channel. We regularly share stories of individuals who discovered that their unique perspectives and capabilities could create positive change in unexpected ways. Whether you're someone who feels overlooked in your current role, a leader interested in discovering hidden talent in your organization, or simply someone who enjoys stories about the triumph of dedication and analytical excellence, our content offers insights and inspiration that can help you recognize potential in yourself and others. Subscribe today to join a community of people who understand that extraordinary contributions can emerge from the most unexpected places. When we're wise enough to look beyond traditional assumptions about talent, capability, and the value of careful observation. Maya's story is just the beginning. There are countless other examples of people who used their unique perspectives and abilities to create positive change that extended far beyond their individual circumstances. Don't miss future stories about transformation, recognition, and the power of seeing what others overlook. Subscribe now and discover the extraordinary potential that exists when talent is recognized, developed, and given the opportunity to flourish.